And I can actually edit that out too. So it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll text my husband and let him know that maybe he should take her for a walk.
yeah. I can cancel background noise out during the
Okay.
editing
Thank you.
process. So. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today I have with us, she's an author, and she has an amazing horror book of poetry that's called Dread. I have with us Melissa Lee. What, Melissa? Welcome to the Horror Room.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, listen, I love horror poetry, and you have a horror poetry book. Tell us a
I
little
mean,
bit
it's
about
not all
Dread.
poetry, but yeah, there's a good chunk of it that is, which is fun.
Oh, give us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Dread.
Sure. So this is my book. It is a collection of horror fiction and poetry. It's stuff that I've written over the past like 2 or 3 years. This is my second release. I actually have another book called Dare that was previously out as well. So it's a little bit more of the same. But the cool thing about it, which I really love, is I got my friend Devin Borkowski to do all of these amazing illustrations. So every piece has like crazy, scary, freaky illustrations in it, and that made me really happy. Yeah, like look at that! Like no one does that. That's so cool.
That's amazing.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. Now,
I'm just thrilled with the way it turned out.
and so this is a collection that you've compiled over the last 2 years.
Yes.
Now, as a writer, do you notice like when you're going over these stories from from even from 2 years ago, do you notice like, wow, my writing style has changed over time?
Um, it's funny. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I notice that it's changed. Sometimes I notice that I'm like, this is the thing about writing is that you go into something being like, okay, I have this concept, I have this idea. This is how I do it. And I put something together, and then you look at it and you're like, this is terrible. I hate this. Why did I even bother? And then if you give it enough time, like a year or, even like 3 months later, you look back at it and you're like, oh no, wait, no, this is actually pretty good, but I can do more with it. Let me fix some things and stuff. So it's not so much that my style has adjusted as I've learned to give myself space to have the confidence in what I'm creating.
And right now, by the way, you know this as well. Women and horror writers right now, especially on the indie scene, is booming. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
amazing that so many women horror authors are coming out. They're self-publishing. They're going to small presses. There's a lot of even presses that it's owned by women and it's all women horror writers.
Yeah, I've been really, really trying to get into writing more stuff for small publications, especially the woman-owned publications. The issue right now is that I have a 1-year-old and she has a lot of my attention and time. So I have the pieces.
Understandable.
It's just the matter of like, okay, do I have the time to do this, or am I going to do laundry? And that's it's always the struggle.
So what is so I have a lot of women who are thinking watch my show and they're thinking about writing their first book or they're thinking about self-publishing their first book. What are some struggles that they may not even know about getting in that you've ran into, and what's some advice you can give them?
Sure. So one of the things that you need to be aware of, especially if you're self-publishing, is that you cannot state your release date as the date that you submit it to Amazon. So when you go through Kindle publishing, if you are submitting it to Amazon, you need to make sure that you have some space. I was very grateful that I got mine approved in like 3 days. But
Nice.
sometimes the formatting is weird or like things are screwed up or whatever. So you have to like resubmit, like fix things, resubmit, then submit again and submit again. So that's the one thing I would give any author who's trying to publish for the first time is give yourself like at least a week, maybe two, between when you officially submit your piece to Amazon and when you would call it your publication date, when you're officially like, hey, this book is out as of October 1st. So yeah, that's a big that's a big thing that you can help yourself out with.
Now, when it comes to marketing, I've talked to many self-published authors, and that is a hard task to navigate around.
Oh, yes.
What are some things that you do to market?
I mean, social media, any other platforms that I belong to. I mean, I work for Renaissance fairs all over the country, so
Oh,
I have
nice.
a huge kind of following-ish with that. And thankfully, there are within our industry a lot of influencers, so I can contact my friends like Jack Lepiars to be like, "Hey, Jacques the Whipper, can you tell people that I have a cool book out?" And like, yeah, sure, okay. Um, yeah, marketing is just it's just hard. That's just the
Yeah.
way it is. It's hard, and it is one of those things that you kind of have to be relentless about in order to get it out to people, and that's kind of why I'm here with you today, Travis, is
Hey,
to
they do.
talk to some new people that I've never met before.
Now, when it comes to like book conventions and horror cons, are they still a valuable option for authors?
I think so. I think it's kind of funny. I haven't had a chance to go to one in a while because of what I do on weekends, but I have been surprised working at Renaissance fairs at how many people do author booths at Renaissance fairs as well. Not necessarily horror stuff per se, but there are a lot of people that have fantasy books or fantasy series that they will take out a booth at a Renaissance fair and sell their stuff there. It's a great way to promote yourself if that's something you're interested in. Also, while I'm not on tour, I predominantly live in the sort of Philadelphia, New Jersey area.
Okay.
And there's this really awesome fair out there called Lunar Fair. And it's supposed to happen on like full moons. And it's in
Ooh.
New Jersey. And they do a lot of fun, witchy stuff. So being able to like submit into something like that is, I think, super valuable if you can get in.
Like you live in the so I live in the Baltimore area, so like
Oh, okay.
we're not that far. But like this is a great area. Baltimore, I mean Maryland, Virginia, DC, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It's a great area to be a horror author. There's a lot of horror authors in this
There,
area.
yeah. And there's a lot of, I mean, there's also just a lot of human beings per capita. Like that's the
Yes.
one thing that they, especially touring all over the country. The East Coast
Mhm.
just has so many people that anything that you're into, you can probably find at least another 2 dozen people nearby that are super into it too.
And we have like a billion horror conventions over in this area too.
Yeah, like, oh, I've
There's
been
so
to
many
one
horror
in New
fans.
Jersey. There was like a horror con in New Jersey. And what I really want to go to is I have one of my favorite bands is Ice Nine Kills.
Oh,
If you
nice. Yes.
them, I love
Mhm.
them. And they have a convention somewhere up in like Massachusetts because I think that's where they were formed. And I've wanted to go to that for years. And I'm like, oh, you're always on a weekend when I'm working. I'm so upset.
And I'm a huge horror convention person. I go to them all over the country too. But it's finding that balance because it's for family life and work, and then I don't- I mean the YouTube channel is like a hobby at this point. It's not to the point where I can live off of this. So like it's kind of like a hobby side job, but to try to balance all the things are tough.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's I think a lot of people share the same thing where balancing your life in general, even if horror isn't necessarily your thing, like no matter what it is, like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
I like to go running for fun, like trying to find time to do the things that you love is going to be a challenge, especially in this modern society. So I think that's one of the reasons why I do Flash Phantasmagoria with Nat 21 Adventures, which is on Twitch.
Check
um
it out.
and it's a little show that I do for 30 minutes on Thursdays. It is at 12 Eastern. And all I'm doing is just like, hey, we're going to hang out for 30 minutes and we're going to come up with some kind of random prompt that we're going to make stuff about. And for 30 minutes, you're going to set aside the time to do a creation of some kind, whether that's writing or poetry or drawing or coloring or anything like that. Just like, hey, for a couple of minutes, we're going to be together in this little space and we're going to do this thing. And it's so hard to carve things out, but when you have like a purposeful carving out of something to do, especially community wise, then it always feels a little bit better.
So how do you stay motivated as a writer? Because I mean, even with me as a YouTube creator, it is so hard to stay motivated and because if you don't do it, you lose it. I'm a firm believer of that.
Oh
So
yeah.
like so I constantly have to get the creative juices flowing, and I'm pretty sure as a writer. So what are some things that you do to stay motivated?
For me, a lot of what I associate is music. I listen to all different kinds of music. I will throw on Spotify and just let it select things for me, which is fun. And that's one of the things that I have in the book is at the very back, I have something called, what did I call it? There it is. Afterwards. And it is for every single piece, it has recommended listening of something that I was listening to at the time I was writing the piece. And it puts you in the mood of what it is that I created. And then it gives you a little bit of an explanation as to where it came from as well. So just for me, music in general, listening to any kind of music, even if it's classical or, country, rap, whatever, will inspire me to create some kind of scene. And that's usually where the stories start.
Now, do you ever use like movies or even news as inspiration?
Yeah, sometimes. I listen to a couple of podcasts. One of them is My Favorite Murder, which a lot of people are really into. And they have some wild stories that they share on there that I'm just like, oh, that's fun. One of the stories that I wrote is about the feet that kept washing up on the shore of the Salish Sea in Washington State. There's like, it's a true story. There's a bunch of random people's feet that have washed up on the shore of this particular area. It's sort of like outside of Seattle. And what they believe it is fishermen in like Asian countries where the fishing isn't as well regulated. Some of these people just fall off the boat, and then because they're wearing sneakers, their shoes are buoyant and just carry what's left to the shoreline. But I put a whole story together based on that random tidbit of knowledge, and that was a fun one to put together.
I didn't even know about that. That's
yeah, it's a mess. It's but it is, yeah, you can look it up. It's Salish, Salish Sea. They do a lot of like that's commercial fishing for I don't know if it's tuna. It's something big fish, but like big fish that you would process industrially and make into little tiny packages of things. But yeah, that's happened for years.
Because I mean, if you think about it, like real life. So I'm a mortician. That's my real job.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And like real life is a horror story. It really is. And like we live. By the way, I should write a book. But but like real life is a horror story. Like and I hear people say, "Oh my goodness, horror terrifies me. I don't want this, not." But it's life. I mean, majority of the stories that come from horror come from something that has happened in life. Like
Yeah.
the feet on the shore. Like I didn't that would scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, there's some realism. I mean, I like putting in as much realism as I can into some of the stuff that I'm doing. Some of it's, it still veers on sci-fi and whatnot, but I like to do weird, unconventional things. Like at one time in the previous book in Dare, I had a friend of mine challenge me to write an unconventional werewolf story. And I was like, okay, what do you mean unconventional? And he's like, well, what if it was a werewolf mermaid? And I was like, okay. Challenge accepted. And I put that together. And the character ends up running around with like this big heavy tail that it's just dragging through the wilderness because it eventually grows legs. And that's what I learned, that manatees have not, it's all internal structure, but they have that big fat tail. And then inside of that tail, they have like residual feet, or where there used to have been feet. There would have been like legs that went off to the sides, and then those have just slowly been subsumed by the giant tail. So that's where I got the inspiration of like, oh, if a mermaid turned into a werewolf, then they would have tiny little legs.
Yeah.
But they would have legs and this giant ass tail that would drag around behind them.
That's a terrifying sight to see.
Yeah, yeah. And I said it in Louisiana, which I'm in right now. That was just, oh man, being down here is a ton of fun because there's just so much uh, like legends around
Yeah,
here, which
a
is,
lot of lore.
yeah. Ooh,
Now,
okay, wait. Can I ask you a question? Because then you remember
sure.
my question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one time I went to a Ren fair and there was a person who was not a mortician. They were a person that autopsy technician.
Mhm.
And I said, "What's the weirdest thing you've ever found in a body?" And she said there was a person who had had a brain aneurysm and they had a pearl like inside of their skull that had formed after, like, I guess they had had an aneurysm and then the brain had sort of calcified around that piece for a bit. And then they had had an
Mhm.
additional one later on and died from that. Like, have you ever found anything really odd when you're preparing a body? Have you ever been like, whoa, okay, wasn't expecting that?
Well, I'm trying to think what I can say. All right.
Yeah.
No, but I have. So here's something I'm gonna say. A lot of single men die. I'm talking about who live alone, right?
Mhm.
I think I've said this in before in my show. They die. Single men who live alone, they die alone, and they're usually not found for days after dying.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could have been something minor as heart attack, and if they had a wife or someone living with them, call 911, they would still been alive.
Right. Yeah.
But the weirdest thing is, a lot of single men die in the process of masturbating. So you go into a house, and majority of the time, a single man has his pants down. He's dead with his pants down every single time.
Wow.
So I don't know. I'm not a medical expert. If you're a medical expert, I don't know what with masturbating would lead to a heart attack.
Well, I mean, it is elevating a whole lot of things. So, like your heart rate is certainly going to go up. Your blood pressure is certainly going to go up because of where the blood is flowing. I guess that would make sense. Wow. See, now I feel like I have to write something about that. It's just like
No,
a bunch of
I
single
mean,
dudes. Pants.
they're coming and going at the same time.
Yeah. That's nuts. Oh, okay. See, now I'm glad I asked that question because I
So yeah, like penis cock rings and stuff like that. That's what's normal. Something weird that I've seen. A lot of people die. A lot of people die during sex. I'm being serious. A lot of people die during sex. You'd be shocked on how many people die during an actual
I mean,
sexual
maybe that's
intercourse.
where all the like succubus incubus legends come from. Because I think as a society, we're just so used to sort of putting death away as like a compartmentalized thing. Like we don't talk about it. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to deal with it. And I find horror, the macabre, interesting in that, you're just accepting that you're going to die eventually. You might as
Yeah,
well like, I find it interesting and fascinating. And I wonder if that's where all of those, if we were as a
probably.
society more familiar with and accepting of death, if we would all be like, oh yeah, everyone dies during sex, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's what not everybody. But I'm talking about younger people. I say younger people. I would say between their 20s and let's say 50s.
Hmm.
A lot die during, and maybe their heart's not strong enough or whatever. But it's usually comes from a heart attack. They usually have a heart attack during the act of sexual intercourse. What that's either relieving themselves or actual with a partner.
That's fascinating. Oh, I can't imagine being that partner and being like, oh no.
I
Well,
would
that was,
never want.
what was that, I think like Clerks or something, where
Yes,
there was a guy who died and while the girl was having sex with him. Yeah.
I would never want to have sex again if I had my
No,
partner
I
died.
probably wouldn't either.
So is there a story that you have written that you were like, for whatever reason, you were like, I cannot really release this to the world?
Oh yeah. I don't remember why I wrote it, but there was one that I wrote. I was just thinking about this the other day. And I shared it with one friend, but I've never released it. There's two. The one I'm thinking of was about this guy who could release his soul from himself. Like his soul could go somewhere else so he could do terrible things. But then eventually his soul had to come back. And the way it like re-enters his body was described very painfully, like reverse birth kind of situation. And I've never released that one. There was also another one I did that was more fantasy wise, where it was a this like prince talking about before he met his princess, that his father had sent him off into the woods to like learn how to be a man kind of situation. And it's sort of coming of age, also like a like he ends up hooking up with this like magical being in the woods. And I was like, oh, this is really cool, except there's some borderline, we don't know exactly how old this prince is, and I should probably rewrite a whole lot of it before I ever do anything with that. But like in fairy tales, which is what I was going for, like you never know how old these people are.
You don't.
And I live and work at Renaissance fairs. Like it was super common, at least for the wealthy elite, to marry their children off at like 14, 15. So, when I'm like, that's what I'm picturing. And I was like, oh no, in a modern society, that is very disturbing. We need to rewrite this a lot before we do anything with it.
So I would love to read both of those. Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing those hopefully in the future.
There are some that I've released. So I have a Patreon Quill and Quote, which I can give you the links to and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I did a series called Excelsior. There's like 3 of them. And that one I was super proud of because I do some romance stuff too. And that was a shapeshifter goes to a strip club where people have like minor mutant abilities. So there's like the lead dancer who comes on at one point. Her ability is that she can project emotions into a space. So when she's like, experiencing the music and the euphoria, eventually she just sort of like waves it out onto everybody and everyone's like, oh my God, this is the best ever. The character that the main character meets later is a person who almost does the opposite. She can draw emotions out of you, and she can it's sort of like Rogue-esque. She can pull your abilities and powers away from you. And this other person is trying to like hide their abilities so that they don't get caught for something. And that was a very interesting, sort of weird, sexy thing to write. But yeah, only the Patreon people have seen that one. So,
and by the way, the link for the Patreon is down in the description. So if you want to check that out, definitely support. All right. So Melissa, I have one last question to you, and this has nothing about horror. This has to do with the Renaissance Festival.
Sure, I'm happy to speak on behalf of my community.
So we have a pretty big Renaissance Festival here in Maryland every year.
Oh yeah. You guys have a huge.
Yeah. And I did not know how big the community is and how individuals, this is a part of their lifestyle. How did you get into the Renaissance Festival?
Sure.
And tell us some secrets about the Renaissance Festival lifestyle that most of us don't know.
Okay. I started getting into the Renaissance Festival, when I was like 2 or 3. My parents took me to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair in Manheim, Pennsylvania. That's kind of where I grew up. And Pennsylvania is known for being a really long running festival, like not just in terms of years, but it runs for 11 weeks. It's huge. Like it just goes and goes and goes and goes.
Yeah.
So I got really into it then. And then in 2010, when sort of the bottom dropped out of the economy, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to audition for this thing and we'll see what happens. And I ended up getting in, and I've been pretty much since 2010, I've been working continually at Renaissance fairs all over the country. Something people don't know. I would say, at least in terms of entertainers, the majority of us at the end of the day, when everyone's like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing afterwards?" I'm like, "I'm going to go home and eat Taco Bell and sleep." That's it. That's what we're doing. We're going to go out and get like Cheap tacos, especially in Louisiana. Louisiana has some amazing Mexican restaurants. So we go out and get like cheap tacos. I get a margarita with extra salt because when you're outside for that long, you're losing salt from your body while you're sweating constantly. So I get a margarita with extra salt. I get tacos, and then we go to bed at like 9. Like it is a. If you've ever been to a beach, if you go out and have a beach day all day, and then by 6 o'clock you're exhausted. We're doing that every weekend because it's just hot.
It's hardcore, and plus, I mean, just the outfits. I mean, the outfits.
Oh yeah,
they're not breathable materials.
Oh yeah, my group is called Chaste Treasure. We're pretty women who sing dirty songs, and I have chosen because it was a very visually interesting thing. We all wear court gowns of varying types and backgrounds. So we have like German ladies, we have Russian ladies, we have a woman from the Silk Road, so she wears like every color ever. But yeah, it is my lightest weight costume, I think, is about 10 pounds. And then the heavy one that I wear when it gets really cold is probably about 40. And you're just wearing that all day. And it is exhausting.
Now, do you make them or do you purchase them?
I'm kind of a mix of both. I made the skirt that I'm wearing most recently. That's not super hard because it's just like you put a bunch of triangles and sew them together. I usually get custom made like bodices or corsets and stuff like that because I'm not super confident with that kind of sewing. Some people make their own. A lot of people will use costumers from varying festivals or a lot of costuming students. We're all related to the theater. So there are plenty of people that are like, hey, I would like to try to put together a Renaissance court gown for the first time ever. What do I need to do that? And you can usually get a really nice custom designed piece for not that much money. But it's still an investment. I mean, I think what I have right now, probably even with the material and the fact that I put some of it together, was probably still like $500 or $600 to put all of it together. But it lasts. I wear that every single day for like 30 weeks of the year, and it's still good.
Good. Now, so I got something else. So the Renaissance peeps, right? Are they the same peeps? I mean, do they roll in the same circle as the peeps? I don't know what they're called, but they're the ones who plays knights and queens and kings in the woods. Or are those the same people, or are they kind of different groups?
Sure. So there's a bit of crossover. LARPing, live action role play. Like Penzic. Penzic is the big thing that happens on the East Coast. That's like near to Pittsburgh. There are a good chunk of people from the Renaissance Fair that will go out and do that event, just because they like doing stuff like that. But there's not as much crossover for Society for Creative Anachronisms, where people are trying to do like somewhat historical things versus Renaissance Fair people. Like not every festival, but most festivals allow a lot of anachronisms to happen. Like, we write verses about Marvel characters, and we write verses about, like DC and anything that's popular, weird stuff for the fun of it. That's more fun to me than trying to be hyper historical accurate. So there is some crossover with people that are more into the historical accuracy or more into the I'm going to role play what it was actually like at the time period, versus the entertainers. We all say we're on the circuit, so we go from show to show to show to show doing what we do. But we don't necessarily dive into the like intricacies of specific Renaissance time period stuff most of the time.
Look, Melissa, we should learn a lot in this interview. So
yeah, I'm always happy to talk more about fairs if you want me to. We do this all year round. I'm in Louisiana right now, and then what is my circuit right now? I'm gonna go from here. Then we have like December off. Then I do the Florida Renaissance Fair in Deerfield Beach. And then I have a little bit of a gap. Then I usually end up doing New Jersey, Maine. In the past, I've done shows in Seattle and Oregon. One year I did Portland on both coasts, which was hilarious. So,
Ooh.
like Portland, Oregon, and then Portland, Maine, almost immediately afterwards. That was real fun. But yeah, we live a lifestyle of this, and it's a lot of fun. It's hard work, but it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, listen, we learned about the Renaissance Festival. We learned that sometimes you can die during sex, or
Yep.
you're imaginable.
Which I'm so proud that you shared that. Thank you.
So be careful, everyone. And we also learned about your amazing book, Dread. Now, where can everyone find it?
Wait. There it is. I can share, like, there's a tiny URL that's just Dread the book. It's super easy. But if you look up Dread on Amazon, it's one of the few things that comes up. That's another tip I would give to people. If you have a title that you're going to work with, look it up on Amazon first, especially if you're going to self-publish. See what else is up there that has the same title. Because originally I was going to write it as like Nightmares. And then I looked that up and I think there's like 4 different Stephen King collections that are Nightmares. And I was like, well, can't compete with that. So I just kept rolling through my head, what's another word that I could use? And I just looked up a whole bunch of them in Amazon until I came up with Dread. And there's maybe 500 things that come up when you type in Dread into a search bar. And one of them is mine.
Definitely get there and grab your copy. And by the way, Patreon is going to be down in the description, so definitely check that out as well and support Melissa. And by the way, Melissa, where can everyone find you on social media?
Oh gosh. So Quill and Quote is where I put a lot of my writing stuff. Otherwise you can find Chase Treasure. I'm like the leader of that group. We post stuff all the time if you like Renaissance fairs. That's probably the easiest places to find me. I have like a normal Instagram too that sometimes I post on, but that's more like, hey, my baby walked, look at that, versus like I'm writing scary things about feet that rolled up on the sea.
Well, but by the way, to all of the viewers, this is actually being recorded on Election Day. So by the time this video goes up, the country might be over. I don't know what the country is going to look like in the next week or two, but hopefully everybody is watching this video and everybody's well. So one way or the other.
Yeah, I would say I saw a great meme today that was, what do we do if we lose? Well, we keep fighting. And then the same person asked, well, what do we do if we win? And it's like, oh, child, it's the same answer. So whatever it is that you are specifically fighting for, you just keep going and do what you can. And
it's out of your hands, whether it's Trump or Harris, just keep on going.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a blast having you on.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to hang out with you, Travis.
Yes, and I would love to hear about the Renaissance Festival. And hit me up if you have anyone in Maryland too. That's not that far from where I live.
I've sent a team there. I've never had the chance to go because I'm usually working at Pennsylvania and they overlap a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, it's such an amazing show. It's
amazing. I've been there twice and it's a blast.
Has some of the best vendors of any festival in the country.
Yes. By the way, get out to the Maryland Renaissance Festival. I don't know when it says, but I know it's lasts for like 2 or 3 months. It's a long time.
I think it starts in either the end of August or the beginning of September, and it rolls through pretty much to the end of October.
Yeah, it's a long period. So if you ever get out to Maryland,
definitely check it out. That's a good one.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. That's Melissa
Lee.
We'll see you next time. Take care. Good job, Melissa.